The good doctor goes all prehistoric. Arthur's Round Table, Maybergh, Henge, Dacre Village, and the Oath of Tolerance, starting with Arthur's Round Table. Over to the good doctor.
Arthur's Table. We're in the ditch surrounding it, and round the outside there's a mound. There's two entrances to it. One has been destroyed by the road by the pub, but it's a central circular area, very flat, probably completely suited with the mound round it to watch adversarial events of some sort, whether they be pugilistic, horses, sword fighting, we don't know. And then just behind me is Maybergh Henge, which we'll come to shortly. It's a nice brisk day. We're up in Cumbria, and this is actually until 1092 used to be part of Scotland, but it actually wasn't Scotland. It was actually part of a Brittonic kingdom, and this particular area is termed Reged. So this henge is probably one of the most impressive in Britain. It's bigger than Stonehenge in area out of the stones, and it's huge. It's a massive mound made of cobbles from the nearby river Lowther, and it's probably about 3,000 to 2,000 years BC, so about 5,000 years old. So we're going to slowly walk up the mound and have a look at it. Behind me, you can hear and see the M6. So I'd driven past this place for about 60 years before I found it. And yet it's the most impressive, one of the most impressive henges in the whole of the UK. We're on the henge, Maybergh Henge, by Penrith, or to use its proper word, as we would if we were anywhere else in Scotland or in Wales, it would have been renamed Penrith, or place on the hill. This is a Brittonic kingdom which would have spoken of a version of Welsh not so long back, less than 1,000 years ago. This henge is 5,000 years old, so about the time possibly they were just starting to build Stonehenge. And you can see the hill over there, and this point is probably here because it's a meeting point. It's a parliament site. It's probably one of the oldest parliament sites in the world, where the local people from this kingdom would have met possibly once or twice a year. Fancifully, I imagine they would have all had to go to the river and bring their rock to put on the henge to build it up, and probably would have been built up over a long period of time. There would also probably have been a ceremony at the site we've just visited, Arthur's Round Table. Until the 1800s, there were 4 large rocks in the middle, but for some reason the Victorians didn't like 4, so they took away 3 and left 1. Who knows why they did that? It's what we do, isn't it? We destroy. I like to touch the rocks because I almost feel my way back to the people who would have put it there 5,000 years ago, and like to try and imagine I'm sort of communicating with them in some way through the rock. But that's just me, and as Neil the vicar says, I'm a pagan.
We're now going to leave Maybergh Henge and Arthur's Round Table, and by means of Google's magic carpet, we're going to fly a short distance west to the lovely village of Dacre, where we'll hand back
a very
to the good
site,
doctor
the site
and his
of
tales.
the old monastery where the anti-idolatry oath was sworn by Aethelstan, the King of Scotland, Constantine, and the ruler of the Brittonic Kingdom that this area stands in. And there's many things in this church that nobody quite understands, and they include the Dacre burrs, if they are burrs. They include the gravestone of an admiral who invented the time ball, and they include the effigy of a Templar knight whose name is unknown, and probably the most interesting issue in the church, because he may be one of the men of the greatest knight that ever lived, William le Marchal. So we walk up to the most interesting aspect of the church you can see today, other than the Templar Knight, which is one of the Dacre burrs. Now, when I first saw it, I wasn't sure it was a burr, but I think the head's gone, and it's probably holding a tree. And there are 4 of them. They stand to the sides of where the church lays today. This is the arm. It's probably lost its head. That's a tree, we think, and there are 4 of them. We'll go and look at the other one now. This is the second burr. The 4th burr, or is it a burr? It's got a very human face. It's got a kind of flat face. And it might be a human clinging on to something. There are 4 of them. It could even represent the 4 kings who came. There were only 3 as far as we know, but there may have been a 4th who came to the site of the monastery. Wauchope's grave, an odd triangular shape. He was inventor of the time ball, and the ball would fall so nearby ships could see exactly when it fell and set their chronometers, so the whole fleet could be set to the same time. The equivalent of in James Bond, set your time now, gentlemen. It was very important to know the time on a ship, particularly with a group of ships, so you could all estimate the same arrival point, because you need the time to know exactly what your longitude is. Latitude is more easy to calculate using a sextant, but you need time to calculate latitude. So if they'd all had different times when they set out, they would all arrive at different places. So we go into the church. Here we have the effigy of a Templar knight. You can see his sword. You can see the typical armour around his head, the chainmail. He's got chainmail on his upper body as well. He was a tall man. He was a large man by modern standards. It may even have been an effigy of William le Marchal himself, although it's said that he's buried in the Temple Church in London. Here we have the base of a Viking cross, and on it you can see what looks like a man and a woman, a deer, and down the bottom 2 other figures with a tree in between them. So we're walking up to Dacre Castle, which is a moated tower house, probably constructed in the 14th century. So probably about just after the Crusade, and it was probably constructed as a defence against raids from Scotland, apparently by somebody called Margaret Moulton, and then was held by the Dacre family, and they lived there until they built their large house further down in the valley. But you can now rent it, and I'm told that it's on a 10-year tenure. So if you want a house, here's your one. I think I'd quite like to live here. Henley and I will sit by the fireplace, have a nice log fire, pull up the drawbridge, no visitors, a little bit of Scotch or Irish. I had some very nice Irish at somebody's house the other day called Middleton. Yeah, we'd have a jolly nice time.
And so here we are at the end, but there are some outtakes.
So apparently,
no.
So
No.
they're just so
no.
So on the
no.
Henge. So as we come up the hill,
get back to the mark.
So I've just been fined by the camera crew because apparently I kept using the word so, and this is a prohibited word, so I've got to buy a few pints in the pub later. Dr. Bunn, I presume, from Africa.
Dr. Hughes from England.
Good to see you, sir.
And you, sir.